Thank you very much. For our colleagues in the room, physically present, you're welcome. And for our audience to whom we are live streaming, we are apologizing for the slight delay. There have been a number of elements, but just for us to introduce the session, we are here to discuss water, placing water at the heart of climate change adaptation and mitigation. And as all of us might have observed throughout this week from the beginning, there has been an opportunity for us to have a meaningful debate on water as the medium for the impacts of climate change and our solutions to alleviate some of those impacts and manage better and provide better, enhance our resilience to the impacts of climate change. I've been encouraged over the last week in the events that I've been able to participate in and the discussions that I've been able to engage in on how water is now being taken, having a foothold into the discussions on climate resilience and climate adaptation and mitigation. Now, for us bringing it back to the work that we do, we've got commitments from our heads of state and government on which we report annually. And I think it has been one of those challenges that the element on water management as a function of buffering the impacts of climate change or our actions on climate change and our infrastructure for economic production, but also, again, providing that adaptation and mitigation role is something that we are not yet adequately being able to report upon. So as we look from our commitments over the years, as encapsulated in the Sharm el-Sheikh Declaration, and the subsequent engagements that we've had at global level, key among which is the commitments we undertook at the 9th World Water Forum, at the UN Water 2023 conference, and now projecting as we prepare Africa to have a common position going into the 10th World Water Forum. It's about time that we reflect on the key issues that are emerging from the information we are gathering and how we are making those preparations based on the member states' contributions. So with us, we will be having a panel to discuss elements of that information as submitted by the member states. But I think for now, what we'll do is we will have the keynote address from the AMCOW president, and that will set the scene for also how we look into the information that is available, and then we go into the panel discussion. So without much further ado, having lost a bit of time, I'll invite Dr. Tahani, our distinguished TAC chair, to give the keynote address of His Excellency, Professor Hani Sewilam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rashid. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, our friends online, just small. First of all, I'd like to convey to you all the greetings of His Excellency Professor Hani Sewilam, the President of the African Ministers' Council on Water, and also the Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation in Egypt. Ladies and gentlemen, so on his behalf, I will say those few words. According to the 2022 report of the Commission of the African Union's Heads of States on the implementation of the July 2008 Assembly Declaration on Water and Sanitation, our continent still faces a number of challenges in delivery of safe water and sanitation services, including inadequate capacity and incommensurate funding for the sector. As a result, coverage for safe drinking water services could only reach 68.5% of our population. Also, over 18% of the population of our continent still practice open defecation. These percentages are alarming and imply that about 866 million of Africa's population has no access to safely managed sanitation and basic hygiene services. The number of people in our continent without access to safe drinking water also stands at about 400 million people. We are also facing population growth, putting more pressure on the available resources and resulting in water scarcity and stress exacerbated by climate change and associated extreme events. Severe droughts, cyclones, floods, and heavy rains have displaced tens of thousands of our people across the continent and affected water services and infrastructure. Against this background, and with less than 2 years to achieve the Africa Water Vision 2025, and less than 7 years to the SDGs 2030, it's time to accelerate action. We are mandated to provide leadership towards the achievement of the Africa Water Vision 2025 and to accelerate the process of formulating Africa Water Vision post-2025. The SDGs and the aspiration of the African Union Agenda 2063. We will need to strengthen the enabling environment for the delivery of water and sanitation for our people. We also need to embrace climate-resilient planning and adaptation to climate change. We must work together to improve water governance and transboundary water resources management. Moreover, strengthening the technical and institutional capacities of member states to face those challenges and work on knowledge, data, and information management, sharing, and reporting is becoming a key objective to move the water agenda forward in the African continent. The multiplicity of regional and national events provides a great opportunity to listen to African voices and to support in undertaking concrete action to mind the gap and face the challenge. Although water and climate change are fundamentally connected, it hasn't always been visible in global policy. For a long time, climate conferences dealt with weather by speaking about an increase in climate-related disasters, such as floods and droughts, while Paris Agreement has no mention of water. This narrative has changed at COP27, where for the first time, the cover decision acknowledged the key role of water in climate action and called upon countries to include water-related targets within national climate planning, constituting a breakthrough that we need to build upon in order to develop an awareness of good water management, to increase climate resilience and acknowledge the role of water in climate systems. During COP27 presidency, an entire day was dedicated to discussion around water issues, organized the heads of state-level roundtable on water security, and launched the Action for Adaptation and Resilience Aware initiative, in addition to a thematic water pavilion during COP27 period, which highly gave visibility on water issue and its strong connection with climate. A lot has been achieved in Aware initiatives, thanks to the effort of the Egyptian government. The 15 plus, now they are 17 as we speak, supportive countries, where the majority is African countries, and the sincere support of the international organization of WMO, FAO, UNESCO, IMI, UNDP, and others. PACWA, the first low-hanging fruit from AWARE, was launched by African ministers on water on the sidelines of AMCOW General Assembly in June 2023, and the AWARE First Steering Committee meeting was held during the 6th Cairo Water Week. I'm full of hope that new initiatives launched in COP28 complement and not replace COP27 initiative. Synergies and coordination between all COP initiatives are necessary to continue elevating water in the climate agenda. And your support to all these initiatives is crucial to keep its momentum for the welfare of Africa and the world. After COP27 came the UN 2023 Water Conference, which also witnessed a significant representation of Africa and the launch of 2022 report on the Commission of the African Union Heads of States on the implementation of July 2008 Assembly Declaration on the Sharm el-Sheikh commitments for accelerating the achievement of water and sanitation goals in Africa. We also presented and secured a buy-in on the key messages from Africa Regional Consultation in the midterm review of the Water Action Decade at UN 2023 Water Conference. Moreover, we supported Dakar's Stakeholders Declaration, a blue deal for water security and sanitation for peace and development. And here I'd like to thank Senegal for continuing the support and taking the responsibility from the World Water Forum 9 to World Water Forum 10. Thank you, Dr. Diatta, and the government of Senegal for this support. As the Africa's input to the midterm review of International Water Decade, Water for Sustainable Development in March 2023. Overall, our events at the UN Water Conference contributed to raising the profile of water in national systems, as well as advocating for commensurate funding for the sector. Moreover, the upcoming 10th World Water Forum provides an excellent opportunity to showcase the progress we have made and the challenges that lie ahead. It is a platform for us to engage in meaningful discussion, exchange knowledge, and forge partnership that will shape the future of water management in Africa. The African and global water agenda was also influenced by significant periodic African meetings and events such as STC meetings, AMCOW-AMCOW meetings, PIDA weeks, various regional and national water events such as Africa Water Week, Africa SAM, Cairo Water Week, and other significant events. As a leader of the African regional process, AMCOW, in collaboration with AUC, UNICA, and the African Development Bank, are committed to mobilize political will and promote policy dialogue. We believe that strong political commitment is essential for driving change and achieving sustainable water management. Through our advocacy efforts, we aim to place water at the top of the political agenda, ensuring that it receives the attention it deserves. In addition to our commitment to political will, water governance, and capacity building, AMCOW recognizes the importance of partnerships in achieving our goals. We understand that no single organization or country can tackle water challenges alone. Therefore, we actively seek collaborations with regional and international stakeholders, including governments, civil society, organizations, academia, and the private sector. Through these partnerships, we leverage resources, expertise, and innovative solutions to address the complex water issues facing Africa. We believe in the power of collective action and collaboration to drive meaningful change. By working together, we can amplify our impact and accelerate progress towards achieving the sustainable development goals related to water and sanitation. There will be many issues competing for attention at the 10th World Water Forum in Bali. It is therefore important to bring the importance of Africa's water issues into sharp focus for the world's leaders and ensure that an integrated and agreed message that reflects the African continent's issues are adopted in presenting Africa's inputs to the forum. In conclusion, I would like to express my gratitude to all the participants for their dedication and commitment to addressing water challenges. Together, we can make a difference. Let's seize this opportunity to strengthen partnerships, share knowledge, and take bold action toward achieving water security and sustainable development in Africa and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tahani, on behalf of His Excellency Professor Suella. I think, again, it's at this point that reference is made to the report of the Commission on the implementation of the commitments of the heads of state and government on water and sanitation. And to make the continuation from what Dr. Tahani has been talking about, I would like to invite our colleague, Nelson Gomonda, who is online, to take us through the outcomes of the 2022 report that is being referred to as we set the stage for our common position going into the 10th World Water Forum and the discussions that we're about to have. Thank you so much. Nelson, please confirm if you can hear us. Nelson? Okay. Okay, we seem to be having a technical problem. When he comes through, we shall be able to bring him online. But in the meantime, I can begin the covering. When we have him, please alert me. This is the brief outline, which is talking about the implementation of the Sharm el-Sheikh Declaration, the report of the Africa Sanitation, the Bengal Declaration on Sanitation and Hygiene, and the decisions of the 5th Specialized Technical Committee on Agriculture, Rural Development, Water and Environment that took place in Addis Ababa in the period 14 to 17 November this year. In a nutshell, this is how we stand on the commitments or the targets that have been set for us in the Africa Water Vision of an Africa where there's equitable utilization of Africa's water resources to alleviate poverty and drive socioeconomic development, and in much the same way assure the sustainability of our ecosystems and natural resources on which our economy is based. We'll note that the Africa Water Vision has got about 7 categories of targets. And among these is improving governance of water resources, where we've set the development of national policies and institutional frameworks that can enable a good governance of our water resources. And from this, the information that is available as of 2022 indicates that we are off track for the enabling environment for regional cooperation on shared water resources. This is something that we need to celebrate. And of course, my brother from Senegal, having led the cooperation, transboundary water cooperation as a theme of the World Water Forum, will be pleased to note that this is something on which, as a continent, we are doing very well. Our regional institutions on promoting transboundary cooperation on shared water resources are working great. In much the same way as we still have challenges that we can iron out to ensure consensus and universal action of all parties concerned, at least we can report something positive on that. But when we go to improving water wisdom, which is something that is critical, especially in this era of the impacts of climate change, planning in an environment of climate variability and climate change, this is something where systems for information generation and assessment is something that we find is a challenge as Africa. And to even emphasize that, the continental body that is mandated to be able to report on this is still not able to report on this parameter because it's not being tracked within the WASMO system. This is something that is critical, especially wherever we go. We are talking about the issues of incommensurate funding or lacking sufficient funding for us to be able to do the work we are supposed to do. But we do not have sufficient parameters in our system to be able to report on this indicator. When we go to meeting urgent water needs, which is things to do with supply of potable water and provision of sanitation services and hygiene services, again, a lot has been done. We've reported quite a tremendous progress since the period of the Millennium Development Goals. But again, the information that we have, based on the targets that we set for ourselves, indicates that we are still off track as a continent. There are member states that have done well on this, but then we are 54 member states, and therefore we present a picture that is continent-wide, and overall we're still struggling on that. When we look at, again, achieving food security, water productivity in rain-fed agriculture, the size of land under irrigation, it's clear we are still off track. Same thing with development of agriculture, hydropower, and industry and tourism. This again has something to do with infrastructure. Now Nelson is available. So again, we are off track. So let me just finish this slide. And then when it comes to strengthening the financial base for the desired water future, which is what drives the implementation of the policies. Again, overall, we are still off track. And I'll now hand over to my colleague Nelson to take over from the next slide on the implications of this picture, broad picture of having 7 parameters, out of which only 1 is on track. Nelson, over to you.
Dr. Mbazira, AMCOW Executive Secretary. I hope you can hear me now. I'm so sorry that the audio feed from this side was not getting into your side, but I hope Charles can confirm that you can hear me now.
We can hear you. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. So from where we stand, as you have just shared, Executive Secretary, the implications of being off track are quite huge in our case. And as we can see on this particular slide, with many of our people not having for their needs, for defecation needs, we have quite a challenge of open defecation prevalence on the continent. Nearly 20% of our population resort to using open spaces for their needs, and that's one of the key implications. We are aware that that particular percentage of maybe nearly 20% might mask the actual situation in other countries, in the sense that that figure goes up quite high in some other countries if you look at the specific situation for each of the African countries. Another challenge of having really not meeting the targets is that we have still over 429 million people on the continent who are yet to access safely managed drinking water. And again, the situation is not good when you talk of sanitation. We have on the continent about 800 million people who are yet to have their safely managed sanitation needs met, as well as basic hygiene services. And again, when you look at the implication of these, especially without having access to safely managed drinking water, but also having safely managed sanitation and hygiene services, we see on the continent quite a huge spread of waterborne diseases, resulting in significant health challenges and increased mortality rates, basically. And if you look at the statistics, especially from the WHO side, looking at the fertility rate, you find that in most cases we have as high as 3% of the fertility mortality, which is even higher and above than maybe the average that is set in such situations by the World Health Organization. So definitely there is quite a lot that we need to do, because having no progress being made is having quite severe impact in other sectors as well. And this is only about health. If we talk about education, then it means that we still have quite a number of challenges. Now, moving on to the next slide, which is now looking at the progress that Africa is making in relation to meeting the 2015 Goal Declaration on Sanitation and Hygiene. Probably for those that are in the room and those that are online, the Goal Declaration came up with 10 key declaration and commitments, and I just want to take you through in terms of what the 2023 report is saying in terms of the progress. So when you look at commitment number 1, we're talking about eliminating inequalities in access to sanitation and hygiene services, particularly with regards to the poor and marginalized groups. We see that there is quite a very good progress, quite high progress actually. The same thing with mobilization of support and resources at the highest political level for sanitation and hygiene to disproportionately prioritize sanitation and hygiene in national development plans. We are seeing quite a high progress as well. But the progress is not quite good when it comes to the finances, where the commitment was about establishing and tracking sanitation and hygiene budget lines that consistently increase annually to reach a minimum of 0.5% of our gross domestic products. This one, we see that the progress is moderate. But when we come to the other commitment on ensuring strong leadership and coordination of at all levels to build and sustain governance for sanitation and hygiene sectors. We across sectors, we see that the progress is quite high for that. But there are two specific areas, as we can see on this slide, where the progress is low. This leads to commitment number 5, which talks about developing strategies, developing and funding strategies to bridge the sanitation and hygiene human resources capacity gap, and also commitment number 7 about progressively eliminating waste and encouraging its productive use in urban and rural settings. Those two areas, the progress is quite low on the continent. And on commitment 6, inclusive and safely managed sanitation services and functional hand washing facilities, we see that on that we have high progress. But the other two commitments related to enabling and engaging the private sector and also establishing government-led monitoring and reporting and evaluation systems, we see that progress on the continent is moderate. Now, moving on to the last slide, as we try to build the context on this one. As we heard at the beginning, there have been calls, especially from the ministers responsible for water and sanitation on the continent, to appeal to the heads of state to really dedicate 2026 as the year with a theme focusing on water and sanitation. And following their appeal, which of course they took as a decision when they met in June in Cairo in Egypt, the decision was to appeal through the Specialized Technical Committee on Agriculture, Rural Development, Water and Environment within the African Union. And as we heard during the meeting that was convened between the 14th and 17th of November in Addis Ababa, just last month, the STC on Agriculture, Rural Development, Water and Environment took the following decisions. Number 1, they endorsed the submission to the Assembly. They endorsed it for the submission to the Assembly, the 2022 annual report of the Commission on the July 2008 Assembly Declaration regarding the Sharm el-Sheikh commitments for accelerating the achievement of water and sanitation goals in Africa. Secondly, they endorsed the submission to the Ministerial Committee on Agenda 2063, the request to adopt the African Union theme on water and sanitation for 2026. Thirdly, they approved the proposal to adopt assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of Agenda 2063 as the African Union theme for the year 2026. The STC also, number 4, endorsed the 2023 report on the implementation of the 2015 Goal Declaration. And then number 5, they endorsed it for submission to the Assembly the Swakopmund Declaration, which was an outcome of the Africa Sanitation Conference that took place between 6th and 10th November in Swakopmund in the Republic of Namibia. The Swakopmund Declaration is on accelerated action for inclusive, sustainable, resilient, and safely managed sanitation and hygiene services delivery in Africa. And lastly, the STC underscored the key role of the member states and encouraged them to actively engage in the ongoing processes to formulate the post-2025 Africa Water Vision. So basically, maybe this is the context that I thought maybe we could share as well. And thanks so much, Executive Secretary Mbazira, for giving me the opportunity. The last slide, basically, it's just an appreciation. So thank you so much again. Beyond this, maybe I may be guided if you'd want me also to cover the presentation that is related to the key outcomes from the 60th Cairo Water Week, which comes after this particular slide that is of the appreciation. The second part of this particular presentation is basically just to highlight the outcomes of those of that 60th World Water Week, and especially the discussions during the high-level meeting on the World Water Forum, the 10th World Water Forum. I may have to be guided if I have to proceed, or we'll have maybe Dr. Diata to take us through this. That's what I wanted to just seek your guidance, Executive Secretary Mbazira.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nelson. Yeah, we've got Dr. Tiata with us in the room, physically present. So we'll hand over to him, especially him having been the person that moderated this session. So we'll hand over to him to do us justice on how he led us on that very wonderful event. We'd like you please stay online because you might have to offer some clarification. Thank you very much, Dr. Tiata.
Okay, I will present something that I was not. The presentation is not online. Thank you very much for this. At the Cairo Water Week, we have a high-level panel, ministerial panel. We have more than 10 ministers at Cairo Water Week, and more than 7 ministers took the floor, have interventions where every minister present the key issue that they think that Africa have to raise in Bali. And it was an amazing high-level panel. It took 2 hours, and people discuss around African issues. And I think that Tahani have prepared the report. Yeah, the outcome of ministerial dialogue in Cairo Water Week, ensuring water security. Yes, the human right for water was one of the key elements where ministers talk about water and climate change, improved use and management, water for biodiversity, non-conventional water resources with the sea desalinizations, water-related risk and disaster management, and nature-based solutions. I think that if we see this proposal in line with what the work that was done also in Dakar regarding the water security issue, it means that these issues remain very important for Africa. For the second item, valuing water and sanitation, prioritizing the nexus approach, water for agriculture, water energy, food nexus, water and public health. I think that this issue also are very important for Africa. For hydro-diplomacy and water cooperation in Africa, how we have to increase transboundary partnerships, sustainable groundwater management, public-private partnership, north-north, south-south, and triangular cooperations, and cross-border cooperation also, somewhere in Africa are very important. For the innovation on water governance, the role of water science was raised as very important, and gender equity, because we know that if you want to achieve water security in Africa, gender mainstreaming are very important. How we take the role of women are important to increase water security. Capacity development and digitalization, the role of artificial intelligence on the wash sector are very important, particularly in developing innovative services. How we have to strengthen Africa water sector resilience to climate change. We talk about a lot during this meeting, the AWARE initiative. The Egypt minister present the initiative as one of the tools that Africa also may adopt, and we are very glad to see that the AWARE initiative have new partner among Africa. We have other continents who are joining this initiative and international organizations. The global support for loss and damage funding to alleviate climate change. Here in the COP, this issue remain again a big issue for the whole humanity. But for Africa, I think that we have to be very clear. This is an important issue for us to elevate and to end or to mitigate climate change in our region. And the last point was to promote relevant African water initiative linked to SDGs. We are going to Bali, but we need to see the way forward after the Africa Water Vision 25. How are we going to have a new vision regarding the Agenda 63 for Africa? And also, we are ending the SDGs, how Africa is preparing for the next decade. We are at 7 years to the SDGs, and what will happen after these 7 years. I think that this was an amazing discussion that we have in Egypt, and ministers press us to see now how we can elaborate more regarding this issue that they propose in Egypt. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Diatta. There we have it. We have the picture from what member states have provided as information against the commitments. In much the same way, we have a distinguished panel of ministers participating in the Cairo Water Week, highlighting a number of priorities that we need to be looking through going forward. It is important that we, as we go on to influence the global agenda on water and sanitation vis-a-vis the aspirations of Africa's economic growth and social development, it's about time that we reconcile the two positions. Here we are with what we are reporting as being done against the commitments that we have, and here is the ambition that we need to, the ministers have set for us going into our engagement with the global community on related issues. And again, being here in this environment at the negotiations on climate change and on adaptation and mitigation within this sphere of climate change and climate resilience, we need to juxtapose this ambition, the status, and where how we want to place water into this global discussion. So I would like for us to have this discussion with a distinguished panel of experts, starting with our Executive Secretary for the African Network of Civil Society Organizations, Madame Saline Malik, who can help, will be helping us get the perspective on this. We'll also have Dr. Tahani as our TAC chair, who is leading the policy process within AMCOW on engaging on these issues and at the same time dealing with the technical issues as the liaison person on this. We have Dr. Ngurare, the Deputy Executive Director from the Republic of Namibia on the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform, who is also can give us the perspective from a member state level. But I would also like to, I know Dr. Diatta wasn't prepared for this, but I would also like you to join us because you bring a certain perspective, having dealt with the 9th World Water Forum and again, having engaged as a member state. I think you bring an interesting dimension to the discussion we are going to have as we project to what we are going to do at the 10th World Water Forum. Kindly join us on stage. I'll start with you, Dr. Tahani. Oh, okay. Let me wait until you've got the microphone pieces. Let's wait, yeah. As they're setting up the others. No, you can set up the others. Yeah. Dr. Tahani, I mean, you are the TAC chair, and you engaged, it's Sharm el-Sheikh where we had the last high-level engagement on water and sanitation. It's almost 15 years since that period. Here is the ambition that our ministers have set and where they're looking forward to taking the sector. And also, let's juxtapose that with what we are reporting as member states against the commitments that we already have in place. From your perspective, and as the person setting the agenda within AMCOW, what need we do differently in order to be able to reconcile these commitments that we already have, the ambition that we already have, and also how we profile and place water at the center of our plans as Africa for mitigation and adaptation to climate change and ensuring resilience?
It's functioning. Thank you very much, Dr. Rashid, for this very important and pivotal question, because although we are trying to make the progress, the road is very long, and we really need to double tens of times of our efforts in order to be able to close this gap between what we want to be and what we are now. this effort cannot be standalone. We cannot do it as countries alone or even as a continent alone. Our capacities need to be built and developed, because we cannot manage the water resources and provide the sanitation services without having the right capacities to do it. The right capacities are not only financial capacities. The right capacities are also technical capacities to build the person who will manage this water. So I think that to mind this gap between the challenges that we are facing and the opportunities that we need, there has to be capable technical people to make this effort and to make the agenda, the water agenda, move forward. So I think that this is very important. The efforts that we are doing in WASMO are very important, because WASMO made us face this reality that we are off track. Maybe when we don't make this comparison within the continent and with the continent and the rest of the world, we cannot really feel that we are lagging behind. But the WASMO exercise, I see that it's very, very important, and it enlightened the gaps that we need to mind very specifically. I don't want to take more than my time. So as a first round, this is what I can intervene with. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'll come back to you again, as you said, how we can connect that to our engagement at the 10th World Water Forum. But allow me to take this to Dr. Ngurare. Namibia hosted Africa on the issue of raising the profile of sanitation. And it's out of the 7th edition of the Africa Sanitation Conference that we got the Swakopmund Declaration on the theme of assuring sustainable water. That's where we got the Swakopmund Declaration on, again, putting in place the systems and partnerships that will assure the rightful place of sanitation and also catalyze the sanitation economy. And it's also at the same conference that we had agreement reached within our member states on assuring water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of Agenda 2063. Again, I'll put to you almost the same question. What do you recommend we do differently as Africa to ensure sanitation and water receive commensurate investment and adequate resources to be able to serve that purpose of driving our agenda for economic growth and social transformation?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Mbazira, and also the colleagues that are here with me, and as well as the colleagues that are logged on. I think fundamentally, one of the things that we should acknowledge is the progress that has been made by our presidents, head of states of government in various countries. In other words, some efforts have been done, some investment has been done. So the journey of a 1,000 mile, if you like, there are few steps that we have already undertaken, and we have to acknowledge that from country to country. But the question is, what is it that we should do differently? I believe that we should begin to have a slight mindset change, which must, one, as we have heard from the ministers that met in Cairo, we have to look at the access to water as well as access to sanitation as a fundamental human right. It is a human right, even us here at COP. Imagine if there was no toilet here imagine if there was no water here. It would be very difficult for us. So that imagination must trigger us to begin to practically recognize the challenges that our people are facing, those who do not have access to those services. And in terms of what is it that we can do to mobilize commensurate funding, I stand to reason that it is better we start from within first. And that is, each African country should come forth or come to the table with a commitment annually to the supply of water in their respective countries. The same goes for sanitation. When we have committed ourselves as African countries with a budget that we can speak highly of, it is easier to mobilize external funding. Now, I would like to give you a few examples from ourselves as Namibia. In the aspect of water, our government has put up a budget but enter into partnership with Africa Development Bank. In other words, it's not exclusively Africa Development Bank funding, but it's government also funding, co-funding the activities, mainly both on the water supply as well as on sanitation. Now, what you saw, which you could recall from Swakopmund, is that we had also begun to roll out sanitation activities from within the ministry. In other words, usually you can have this put out to the contractors and so forth. That is fine. But we have deliberately realized that in Africa, sometimes we are not appreciating the fact that we have trained in the universities many young people who are unemployed, and they are there. They have the skills, but they are not being engaged necessarily to be able to do some of these things. So as we speak, we are nearly finishing about 100 of these sanitation facilities in various constituencies of the country, being done by unemployed young professionals who have expertise in VTC training, vocational training centers, and so forth. So we believe that that is easier to be able to maintain this infrastructure because they are doing it with their communities. And it's hence government investment as well as those that are coming in to help us, they can see that this infrastructure will be durable, which is part of what we have decided in Swakopmund as a declaration. Now, the other part that we have also done, which we are doing, is we are piloting water for agriculture, as you have put up there. Our approach is to say, and which is the same for any African country, there are a lot of unemployed people in rural areas. And there are most of these are women. Some of these are young people. So what we have begun to do is, as part of supply of water, but we also make deliberate drilling of boreholes in rural areas for purposes of small-scale irrigation. Why? Because then they can be able to produce food from it, but also food for their own consumption, but some they can then sell the surplus food and so forth. That in itself creates some form of income-generating activities. So, to answer your question then, I stand to be corrected, but I think I might be right to say, since 1960, Africa has trained an army of experts. They are in all our 54 countries. They are there. Some are engineers, some can even help us to go to the moon and back. But the question is, how do we engage this internal capacity to unlock the technologies that we have mentioned here, to unlock the sophistication of solutions that we can have here? So I believe that in this whole process, the figures that we have here, 400 million, 800 million, it's very paining figures. And we should then be able to mobilize the capacity that exists within us. Find it, let's find it, unlock it, and be able to use it so that annually we can be able to say, even monthly perhaps, we can be able to say we are sort of chipping from this big number of 400 that have no access to sustainable water supply or safe drinking water. It pains me, and I think it pains all of us. The fact that we have in Africa our fellow human beings who are living next to sewerage water, or those who have no access to water at all. I don't think it is business as usual. So therefore, let us talk, what do they call it? Let us walk the talk. But this walk the talk must be each one reach one. It must be paining all of us. With that pain, we can then be able to go externally to mobilize funds from outside so that we can now strengthen what we have inside. So I believe Swakop Mood Declaration is a roadmap which I hope African presidents and head of governments can be able to internalize at the level of the African Union. And I think that speaks to a real suitcase of action that we can take to Bali and elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ngurari. You make very interesting points there. Walk the talk, I think, is this soundbite that we need to take out of here among the others. I'll come to you, E.S. Malik. I mean, these are the reality, the harsh reality of these failures or commitments that are unrealized is born on the community of the people that we serve, who do not sit in some of these fora, and for whom what is important is the job creation, the employment opportunities, the peace and security, no need to forced migration because of either environmental scarcity or circumstances that could be better managed if we lived up, we did the walking the talk. Again, I mean, you've also seen the figures going into what it is that we've done for the current
interpreting stops. Thank you.
As we prepare for the post-2025 Africa Water Vision, again, I'll put the same question to you. The perspective should be the same. What need we consider differently as we formulate the post-2025 Africa Water Vision that will assure that that person that we are meant to serve at community level realizes the benefit of our engagements in such fora as this one?
Thank you, Rashid. I think let's start with the 50% that are still being left behind, which are women and girls. Now, as I shared with you, we just had a session with Amina Mohammed of the UN, and we expressed our disappointment that the gender agenda had not been approved, or it's been postponed or not agreed on here at COP. And she said something very interesting. She said, when you use the word gender, there's usually a pushback. So I think the first motion that we would support is that we probably use now the word women and equity to become very specific, particularly for the Africa 2025 vision. I think for people with disabilities, vulnerable communities, that is understood within inclusivity and equality. But to be very specific that now we are talking about women, which represent the 50% that are still in the doldrums because, of course, their time is being spent fetching water and having all kinds of issues related to that. If we can sort out that particular area, and if we can also, another proposal that was made in that meeting was the issue of rights. Why is it that it's only 4 countries on the continent that have it in their constitution, and when we ask the other countries about it, they feel they can't guarantee it? There was probably a proposal that we probably have to review the language in terms to allow some of these countries to meet that progressive target. She said she understood why some of these countries did not want to commit to it. Because she says, you're asking somebody to commit who has his hands tied, his leg tied, and his eyes covered to commit to something that they may not be necessarily in a position to discharge. So I think this is going to be really critical that we think about it. Third, in terms of, yes, livelihoods, job creation, agriculture, again, it is ensuring that these water lines reach where they're supposed to. Just the other day, I was telling participants, if there are no water lines, there's no health, there's no education, there's no agriculture, there's nothing. And I think Jackson once said, when there are no toilets, you don't get tourists. Toilets attract tourists. I remember that. That was a pretty good statement. So I think moving forward, yes, as always, we continue with the engagement of the various sector stakeholders, whether the civil society, whether the private sector, state, the various groups, but also the indigenous people who I think there's a lot of knowledge over there. Today I learned a new word, heritage solutions, yes. Heritage solutions. So I think these are some of the things that we have to think about. But Dr. Mbazira, I think the most important now is we change from gender and we become more specific to women, yeah.
Women and equity.
Women and equity, yes.
I hear you.
You hear me?
Yeah. And of course, I'm hoping that you will be that advocate as we engage on these issues. I would like to take it to Dr. Diata now. Yes, I mean, this is what we are referring to. We've made commitments, and this is the perspective of a member state, a continental policy organ, and a person that deals with the realities of failures on sanitation and the promises of water supply and sanitation, and even management of our resources. As we go on to engage the global community, having led the processes of coming up with the outcome of being very active in the outcomes of the 9th World Water Forum, and now as we prepare against this background, how do you want us to position ourselves equally well as we head into the 10th World Water Forum against the backdrop of what our distinguished panel has highlighted as the challenges and the areas that we need to be focusing on?
Thank you, Doctor. I would like to thank Dr. Ngurare for welcoming us in Swakopmund. It was a wonderful Africa sun, and we like Swakopmund, and maybe thank also to AMCOW for the leadership that is shown in Swakopmund, where the sanitation also was raised as an African priority. Regarding the 10th World Water Forum, what we learned about the 9th World Water Forum and the outcomes of the 9th World Water Forum, I think that Africa have to be proud. Africa have to be proud and use these outcomes. We have not to invent the wheel, because in Dakar, people discussed 3 years before, because we have time with the COVID, and 1 year of preparation physically. We have strong outcome coming from Dakar, and I recommend AMCOW to see what they can use from these outcomes. In Dakar, we discuss about water security and sanitation, rural development, water for rural development. Ngurare raised this important for our rural areas. Africa have a problem because we have most of the rural area, and water is not taken into account with the importance of water is not there. How we can give water for rural people to curb migration? Today, migration is one of the issues of Africa. Don't forget this issue. It's very important. We talk also about, we discuss about in Dakar the importance of cooperation, all types of cooperation, but specifically transboundary cooperation. And we also discuss about how we can implement this. This is the means and tools. The importance of finance, innovative financing, inclusive governance, knowledge, and science, the importance of knowledge and science and innovation. These 5 aspects structure what the main outcome of the forum, the Blue Deal, is how we have to strengthen the human right to water and sanitation, water and resilience, water availability and resilience, water cooperation in the spirit of idle diplomacy. Water must unite us and not be an arm or must be an instrument for countries' development in Africa. And in Senegal also we talk about the importance of finance, and we launched the African Investment Program on water. We also propose goods, three main aspects where Africa have to base to increase financing water infrastructure and for having access to water in Africa. I think that let's see what we can take from the Blue Deal to enrich the proposal that we have in Egypt. And many of the ministers raised the fact that in Dakar, the importance of water security. I saw that we have a lot of, sometimes what French call prudence on using water security. Don't be ashamed. Water security is a strong concept, and I think that we have to use it because water security is in the African agenda, African security agenda. Let's use the importance of water security as a priority for Africa. Don't be frivolous to use this. I know you have political matters about this, but water security is a global concept. It's not an African concept, okay? Use water security as a priority for Africa. I think that this is very important for us as a legacy of the 9th World Water Forum, but water security is a global challenge and a global issue. And we have to be aligned around this issue because at the United States, at the UN, all people are talking about water security. If Africa go there without talking water security, we will not be on track. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Diata. I think you've just captured it, water security. Let's not be shy about it. Let's take it to the rest of the world. Dr. Ngurare, your take on going into the 10th World Water Forum, your one word that, or one priority that you'd like to see captured into our preparations and our common position.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bazira. I think what we should capture, if I look at the conclusion of the declaration of Swakopmund, it speaks about inclusive, it speaks about sustainability, and it speaks about all aspects of strengthening either now the governance of institutional nature, the financial, the participation, the technological advancement, and so forth. So again, I go back to what I was saying earlier. If we can capture the support of our political leadership, the support of the entire Africa around the declaration of Swakopmund, we would not have to worry because the homework is done. It means that we have a buy-in of everybody. Of course, it's work in progress in terms of getting that commitment, but when you read every word of the declaration, it really manifests many of our aspirations. And that if we implement it, some of the issues we have mentioned here would be a thing of the past. In other words, commitment of a practical nature beyond theory. What is it that we must do? How do we capacitate young unemployed people? How do we capacitate women? It should not be just academic abstract. It should be very measurable, impactful, and say this is how we are going to do it. If Senegal is doing it in the West, somebody is doing it in the East, somebody in the North, somebody in the South, the whole of Africa. Water, there is nothing that unites us more than water because the essence of life is on it. Sanitation is dignity. Nobody gets off the plane, do nothing else but go to the toilet. Now, imagine if there is no toilet. Again, I want to emphasize that again and again. So I believe in the strength of our African people. I believe in the strength of our women in Africa, our youth in Africa, but also the ingenuity and creativity of many of the young people that have been trained within the very many institutions of higher learning. And I believe that we must invest in them. We must give them opportunity. Like you said at the Africa Sun, it is an economy the whole aspect of water and sanitation is an economy which can be able to make a game changer in respect of socio-economic development of each of our African countries. So in short, that is what I would say is a part cost. In Afrikaans, so we say part cost as we go to Bali. So,
Dr. Tahani, your take on that, the same topic?
Yes, a very important takeaway message. We are running out of time with Africa Water Vision 2025. Now we are starting 2024. I think that we need to accelerate the process in order to have a vision, a clear one, and actions, concrete actions to move forward very quickly. Time is not in our side at all. This is one thing. The other thing also is the involvement of the African countries. We have to be inside of the process and try to put our worries and put our challenges on the table and try to attack everything together. So I think that's very important. Quick action is very important. We have to finalize with the engagement of the countries. We need to finalize very quickly the Africa Water Vision post-2025. Because otherwise we will lose the track, and this is very serious now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Accelerate.
If there's one thing I think we should mobilize for and put all our efforts and resources in is the governance of this sector. The governance, la gouvernance du secteur. It is really critical that we get this governance of ours sorted out. Now, nice, beautiful declarations have been made that water is the engine of climate change action, which means that climate change action is going to use the water systems. That in itself, yes, is an achievement. But if our engine still has problems, as we all know, parts are missing, tune-up has not been done yet, the engine is not there, then, you know, this is going to be a bit complicated. But it all rests, I believe, on the issue of governance, something we've been talking about for the last 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. And also, Dr. Mbazira, looking at your presentation, the word governance has come up I don't know how many times. So I think it's really critical that we refocus on governance. Let that Africa post-2025 vision have a governance addendum. Let it be there in terms of this is what is required in this sector, this is what you must abide to, and hopefully it will impact as well our environments. I know Honorable Schlettwein dropped it like a lead balloon when he mentioned the issue of illegal financial outflows, and that, you know, if we manage to stem that bleeding, we should be able to fund this sector. If we're able to control non-revenue water, we should be able to support this sector. And all this rests on issues of governance.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, our distinguished panel, Dr. Diata, Dr. Ngurare, Dr. Tahani. Yes, Malik, thank you very much. I mean, in a nutshell, we've talked about capacity development, fully operationalizing the WASMO system and benefiting more from it, the mindset change, mobilization of resources from within, then going to the external community when we already have our commitment, utilizing the skills that we've imparted, the army of youth and that are now underutilized, then purposeful utilization of our resources to drive the rural economy, our groundwater resources to drive the rural economy that will in turn spur financing of our sector, mobilizing and utilizing or walking the talk. I invite everyone to listen to ourselves and then act on what we've committed. Then the gender pushback is recognized. Now let's paraphrase, let's change the narrative to women and equity. And then, yes, the issue of rights, how can we approach it differently so that it gains more traction than we are already doing? And then how about engaging traditional and heritage solutions? in order to be able to do this. And of course, innovativeness and financing and water security and the Blue Deal. We already have these solutions. The Swakopmund Declaration covers literally everything. Let's then put them into action. Thank you very much for your contribution to this. And of course, accelerate as quickly as possible to be able to get the post-2025 Africa Water Vision. Thank you very much. And